The surface of the black river shattered with a sickening crack as the ice gave way beneath Zara, Northwick's weight, and the water swallowed her whole before she could even scream. Yarrow Kellerman had been carrying firewood back to his cottage when he heard the splash. He dropped the bundle without thinking, his boots already pounding across the frozen ground toward the riverbank. Most men in Millhaven would have hesitated at the sight of green skin disappearing beneath black water. Most men would have remembered the stories their grandmothers told about orcs raiding villages in the old days, about tusks and blood and burning homes. Yarrow saw only a person drowning, and that was enough. The river lived up to its name in winter, dark as pitch and twice as cold. Yarrow did not let himself think about the temperature, or the current, or the fact that he had never been a particularly strong swimmer. He kicked off his boots, sucked in the deepest breath his lungs could hold, and threw himself into the water after her. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing the air from his chest and turning his muscles to lead. He could not see anything in the murky darkness, could barely tell up from down. His hands swept through the water in desperate arcs, searching. His lungs began to burn. The current pulled at him, trying to drag him downstream. He pushed deeper, refusing to surface without her. His fingers brushed fabric. He grabbed hold and pulled, wrapping his arm around what felt like a torso. She was heavier than he expected, all muscle and bone, and she was not moving. Yarrow kicked toward what he hoped was the surface, one arm locked around her, the other clawing through the water. His vision started to spot. His chest felt like it might cave in. Just when he thought they would both drown together, his head broke through into blessed air. Yarrow gasped and coughed, treading water with legs that felt like jelly. The woman in his arms remained limp. The current had already carried them a good 20 yards downstream. He struggled toward the bank, half swimming and half dragging them both through the freezing water. His feet finally found purchase on the rocky bottom, and he hauled her up onto the shore, collapsing beside her in the mud and dead grass. She was not breathing. Yarrow rolled her onto her back, his hands shaking so badly he could barely function. She was young, maybe his own age of 23. Her skin was the color of spring leaves, and small tusks curved up from her lower jaw. Her black hair was plastered to her face. She wore traveling clothes that had seen better days, patched and worn thin in places. And she was definitely not breathing. He had seen his uncle revive a drowned boy once, years ago. Yarrow pressed his hands to her chest and pushed hard, counting under his breath. Water trickled from her lips. He kept going, pushing and counting, pushing and counting. His own body was starting to shake violently from the cold, but he could not stop. Would not stop. Come on, he thought desperately. Come on, breathe. He tilted her head back, pinched her nose, and breathed into her mouth. Once, twice. Back to the chest compressions. He lost count of how many times he repeated the cycle. His arms ached. His vision swam. Just when he was beginning to lose hope, she convulsed beneath his hands and vomited up what seemed like half the river. Yarrow rolled her onto her side as she coughed and choked, her whole body racking with the effort. When she finally stopped, she lay there gasping, her eyes squeezed shut. She was alive. She was breathing. Yarrow felt something loosen in his chest, some terrible knot he had not realized he was carrying. "Can you stand?" His teeth chattered so hard he could barely get the words out. "We need to get warm. My cottage is close." Her eyes opened. They were amber, bright and wild as a hawk's. She stared at him with obvious confusion, taking in his dripping wet clothes and his pale, shivering form. Then she seemed to realize what had happened, and her expression shifted to something Yarrow could not quite read. "You jumped in after me," she said. Her voice was rough from the river water, deeper than he expected. Why would you do that? You were drowning. It seemed like an obvious answer to him. She pushed herself up on one elbow, wincing. I am an orc. You were still drowning. Zara stared at him for a long moment, and Yarrow wondered if maybe she had hit her head on something in the water. Then she tried to stand, her legs buckled, and he caught her before she could fall back into the mud. My cottage, he repeated, slinging her arm over his shoulders. 5 minutes. We will both die of cold if we stay out here. She did not argue, which told him she understood how serious their situation was. They stumbled together across the frozen ground, and Yarrow had never been so grateful to see his small, drafty cottage in his entire life. He kicked the door open and half carried her inside, guiding her to the chair nearest the fireplace. The embers from this morning's fire still glowed in the hearth. He fed them kindling with shaking hands, blowing gently until flames caught and spread. Get those wet clothes off, he said, moving to the trunk by his bed. He pulled out a wool blanket and tossed it to her, then grabbed another for himself. He stripped out of his soaked shirt and trousers without ceremony, too cold and too exhausted to care about modesty. He wrapped the blanket around himself and turned to find her still sitting in the chair, fully clothed and dripping onto his floor. You will catch your death, he said. I should leave. But she made no move to stand, in wet clothes in winter with no supplies. Yarrow crouched to add larger pieces of wood to the fire. That is not leaving, that is dying, just slower. You do not understand. Her voice was tight. If anyone sees me here, no one will see you. He turned to face her. This cottage is a quarter-mile from the village proper. I live alone. You can stay until you are well enough to travel safely. Why? The word came out almost accusatory. You do not know me. I could be dangerous. Yarrow looked at her, really looked. She was shivering so hard her teeth chattered between words. Her lips were tinged blue. She looked about as dangerous as a half-drowned cat. You are not dangerous right now, he said simply. Right now you are cold and wet and in need of help. Everything else can wait. Something in her expression crumbled just for a moment. Then she nodded once, sharp and quick, and began working at the laces of her tunic with stiff fingers. Yarrow turned his back to give her privacy, moving to the small kitchen area to set a pot of water over the fire for tea. He heard the wet slap of fabric hitting the floor, then the rustle of the blanket. Done, she said quietly. He brought her a cup of weak tea when it was ready, made from the last of his chamomile stores. She wrapped both hands around it and held it close to her face, breathing in the steam. They sat in silence for a long time, the only sound the crack and pop of the fire. Slowly, painfully, feeling returned to Yarrow's extremities. His fingers and toes burned as they warmed. He could see her grimacing with the same discomfort. I am Yarrow, he said eventually. Yarrow Kellerman. She studied him over the rim of her cup. Zara Northwick. That is a northern name. I was raised in a human settlement until I was 10. They gave me a human name. She said it matter-of-factly, but there was something underneath the words, some old hurt she was not quite hiding. Then my mother died and my orc father took me back to his clan. I have been with them ever since. Until now, her jaw tightened. Until now. Yarrow recognized the tone of someone who did not want to talk about something, so he let it drop. He refilled her tea and made himself drink 2 full cups, knowing his body needed the warmth and liquid. Outside, the winter sun was starting to sink toward the horizon. The temperature would drop fast once night fell. You can have the bed, he said. I will take the floor by the fire. This is your home, and you are my guest. He pulled a straw mattress from beneath his bed frame, something he kept for the rare occasions his brother visited. I have slept on worse. Zara looked like she wanted to argue, but another violent shiver ran through her, and she seemed to reconsider. Just for tonight. I will leave in the morning. They both knew she would not be in any condition to travel in the morning, but Yarrow did not contradict her. He banked the fire and settled onto the mattress, his body aching with exhaustion. The events of the day crashed over him all at once. He had jumped into the Black River in the dead of winter. He had pulled an orc woman from its depths. She was currently sleeping in his bed, her wet clothes draped over his chairs, and if anyone from the village found out, there would be hell to pay. He should have been worried. Instead, he felt strangely calm. He had done what needed doing. Whatever came next would come. Sleep took him quickly, deep and dreamless. When Yarrow woke, weak winter sunlight was streaming through the gaps in his shutters. The fire had burned down to embers again. He was alone in the main room, and for a moment he wondered if the entire previous day had been some fever dream. Then he saw the wet clothes still draped over the furniture and heard a faint rustling from the direction of the bed. He sat up slowly, his muscles protesting. "Zara, still here." Her voice sounded rough, congested. "Tried to leave about an hour ago. Made it as far as the door before everything started spinning." Yarrow stood and moved to the bed. She was sitting up against the wall, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her face was flushed, her eyes too bright. He pressed the back of his hand to her forehead and swore under his breath. "You are burning up. Probably just caught a chill from the river." She tried to sound dismissive, but the effect was ruined by a wet, hacking cough that shook her whole frame. Yarrow knew river fever when he saw it. He had nearly died from it himself when he was 12, after falling through ice not far from where he had pulled Zara out yesterday. She needed medicine, or at least the herbs to make something that would help. His stores were nearly depleted after a long winter, but old Marta, who lived on the eastern edge of the village, kept a well-stocked herb garden even in the cold months. She dried and preserved everything. "I need to go into the village," he said. "Get some things for fever and cough." Zara grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "You cannot tell anyone I am here. I will say the medicine is for me. I was in the river too, remember. It is not even a lie." She searched his face, then slowly released his wrist. "I am sorry. I am causing you trouble." "No more than I chose to take on." He pulled his spare shirt over his head, then his winter coat. "There is bread and cheese in the larder if you are hungry. Do not try to leave while I am gone. If you collapse in the snow, I will just have to fish you out again, and I am getting tired of rescuing you." He said it lightly, trying to coax a smile from her, but her expression remained serious. "Why are you helping me?" Yarrow paused with his hand on the door latch. It was the second time she had asked him some version of this question. "My father was a soldier in the border wars, back when there was still fighting between humans and orc clans. He came home with a wound that went bad, infection spreading up his leg. The surgeons wanted to take the whole leg off at the hip, probably would have killed him." He turned to face her. An orc healer was passing through the village, an old female who had been exiled from her clan for some political reason I never understood. She offered to help. Most people wanted to run her off, but my mother was desperate. She let the orc woman treat my father. Whatever medicine she used, it worked. The infection cleared. He kept his leg. That was years ago, I assume. Your father, is he still alive? No, he died when I was 15. Different illness, nothing anyone could cure, but he had 5 extra years because of that orc healer. Yarrow shrugged. I figure I owe your people a debt. Yesterday seemed like a good time to start paying it back. He left before she could respond, stepping out into the cold morning. The walk to the village proper took only 15 minutes at a brisk pace. Millhaven was a small settlement, maybe 60 families all told, clustered around a central square with a well and a meeting hall. Most people were already up and about their business despite the early hour. Winter on the frontier meant you worked when you had daylight and slept when you did not. Yarrow nodded to the blacksmith and his apprentice, waved at one of the farmer's daughters he had known since childhood. Everyone seemed focused on their own tasks, no one paying him unusual attention. Good. Marta's cottage sat at the end of a narrow lane, identifiable by the bundles of dried herbs hanging from the eaves. Yarrow knocked, and the old woman opened the door almost immediately. She was well into her 7th decade, her face a map of wrinkles, but her eyes were sharp as ever. "Yarrow Kellerman, heard you went swimming in the Black River yesterday." Yarrow's heart sank. "How did you hear that?" "Thomas Brindle was checking his fish traps, saw you go in, saw you pull someone out, said it looked like you were wrestling a bear." She squinted at him. "Said the person you pulled out had green skin, but Thomas drinks too much and sees things, so I told him to keep his fool mouth shut before he started a panic." "It was me who went in," Yarrow said carefully. "Lost my footing on the ice, banged myself up getting out. I was hoping you might have something for the fever and cough I feel coming on." Marta stared at him for a long moment. Then she sighed and stepped back, gesturing him inside. "You always were a terrible liar, boy. Your face gives you away every time." She moved to her herb stores, pulling down various jars and bundles. "Fever and cough, you said. This would be for the orc girl you have hiding in your cottage, I assume." There was no point in denying it. "Please do not tell anyone." "Who would I tell?" "I am an old woman who lives alone and talks to her cats." She measured out dried leaves and roots, wrapping them in small cloth bundles. "This is willow bark for the fever. Steep it in hot water, have her drink 3 cups a day. This is thyme and mullein for the cough. Same preparation. And this," she added a 3rd bundle, "is elderberry, good for general recovery. She will need to rest for at least a week, probably 2. I do not have money to pay you right now, but I do not want your money." Marta pressed the bundles into his hands. "Your father was a good man, and your mother was my friend before she passed. You have a good heart, Yarrow, but you need to be careful. Most people in this village are not like you. They remember the wars. They teach their children to fear orcs. She is not dangerous. Maybe not to you. But if the wrong person finds out you are harboring her, there could be trouble. Real trouble." Marta's expression softened. "I will keep Thomas quiet, tell him he was seeing things like I said. But you be smart about this. Do not let anyone else see her." Yarrow thanked her and hurried back to the cottage, the herb bundles tucked safely inside his coat. He found Zara exactly where he had left her, though she had pulled on her shirt at some point. It was still damp in places and she looked miserable, but at least she was upright. "Got what we need." He set to work immediately, stoking the fire and setting water to boil. He prepared the teas exactly as Marta had instructed, then brought them to Zara, one at a time. She drank without complaint, though she grimaced at the bitter taste of the willow bark. "Your village healer must trust you a great deal," she observed. "She is a good woman, knew my parents." He settled into the chair across from her. "Someone saw us yesterday at the river, but Marta will keep him quiet." Zara's hand tightened around her cup. "You see, I am already causing you problems. One old drunk seeing things is not a problem. It would only become a problem if you were foolish enough to leave before you are healed and collapsed in plain sight of everyone." He gave her a pointed look. "So you will stay here, rest, and drink your terrible tea like a sensible person." "Agreed." She looked like she wanted to argue, but another coughing fit stole her words. When it finally subsided, she slumped back against the wall, exhausted. "Agreed," she whispered. The days that followed fell into a strange sort of rhythm. Yarrow tended the fire and prepared simple meals, soups and porridge mostly, things that were easy on Zara's overtaxed body. He made her drink the medicinal teas religiously, 3 times a day like Marta had instructed. In between, He worked on the small projects that always needed doing around a cottage, mending a crack in the window frame, sharpening his tools, organizing his meager supplies. Zara slept most of the first few days, waking only to drink tea and eat a few bites of food before exhaustion dragged her back under. On the fourth day, the fever finally broke. Yarrow came in from chopping wood to find her sitting up in bed, looking weak but clear-eyed. "You are back among the living," he said, unable to keep the relief from his voice. "Thanks to you." She watched him stack wood by the fireplace. "I have been thinking, when I am well enough to travel, I could go south. I heard there are orc communities in the southern mountains that are more accepting of outsiders. That is a 2-week journey on foot minimum, in winter." Yarrow straightened, brushing bark from his hands. "You would need supplies, warm clothes, food. I will manage." "Or," he said slowly, "you could stay here until spring. By then you will be fully recovered and the journey south will be much safer." Zara shook her head. "I cannot ask that of you. You are not asking, I am offering." "Why?" There was that question again, but this time it sounded less defensive and more genuinely confused. "You do not know me. I could be a criminal, exiled for some terrible crime. Are you?" "No." "Then what happened?" She was quiet for a long time, her fingers worrying at the edge of the blanket. "The clan I was living with, they wanted to raid a human settlement to the north. Just a small farming community, barely 50 people. I argued against it, said we should focus on hunting and trade instead of risking a war. Most of the warriors disagreed. I kept pushing, and the war chief got tired of my dissent." She met his eyes. "He gave me a choice, participate in the raid or leave the clan. I left. That must have been difficult. It was necessary." But her voice was tight, and Yarrow could hear the pain underneath. "I could not be part of slaughtering innocent people, but my father is still with that clan. My younger brother. By leaving, I shamed them. They may never forgive me." Yarrow thought about that for a moment. "My father always said the hardest choices are the ones where both options cost you something. You chose not to kill innocents even though it cost you your family. That took courage, or stupidity. Maybe. But I am glad you made that choice, because it means you are not the kind of person who would have raided that settlement." He ladled soup into a bowl and brought it to her. "And for what it is worth, I think your father and brother will forgive you eventually. Family has a way of coming back together. You sound very certain for someone who does not know my family. I know people. And I know that anyone capable of raising a daughter who would give up everything rather than compromise her principles probably has some principles of his own." He handed her the bowl. "Eat. You need to rebuild your strength." She ate slowly, and Yarrow noticed she was using her left hand primarily. When she set the bowl aside, he caught her wincing as she moved her right arm. "You hurt yourself. Just my shoulder. Must have wrenched it in the river." "Let me see." She hesitated, then pulled her shirt aside enough to reveal her right shoulder. The joint was swollen and deeply bruised, purple and yellow spreading across her green skin. Yarrow sucked in a breath through his teeth. "That needs to be wrapped, supported." He went to his limited medical supplies and pulled out a length of clean linen. "This is going to be awkward, but I need to bind your arm to your torso to keep the shoulder immobilized. You do not have to." "Yes, I do. If you try to use that arm too soon, you could cause permanent damage." He moved behind her. "Tell me if I hurt you." He worked as gently as he could, wrapping the linen around her shoulder and under her opposite arm, creating a makeshift sling that would keep everything stable. She was tense under his hands at first, but gradually relaxed as she realized he was trying to help, not harm. "There," he said, tying off the bandage. "Keep that on for at least 2 weeks. Do not try to use the arm. You seem to know a lot about injuries." "My father taught me." He learned field medicine in the wars. Yarrow moved back around to face her. Besides, I have hurt myself plenty of times. You learn things when you live alone. Zara studied him with those sharp amber eyes. Do you like living alone? I do not mind it. After my mother died 3 years ago, my brother moved to the city to apprentice with a merchant. Said there was no future in frontier farming. He was probably right, but I could not leave. This cottage, this land, it is all I have left of my parents. He shrugged. Most days it is peaceful. Some days it is lonely. I suppose that is the trade. I understand that, Zara said quietly. Loneliness, I mean. They looked at each other for a moment, and Yarrow felt something shift in the air between them, some acknowledgement of shared experience, of parallel hurts. Then Zara yawned hugely, her tusks flashing, and the moment passed. You should rest more, Yarrow said. I am going to walk the property line, make sure the winter has not brought down any trees on the fences. He escaped outside, breathing in the cold air and trying to settle the strange flutter in his chest. It was just the situation, he told himself. The intimacy of close quarters, the intensity of the rescue. It did not mean anything. The days continued to pass. Zara grew stronger, able to stay awake for longer periods. She insisted on helping around the cottage despite her injured shoulder, folding blankets one-handed, organizing his chaotic herb supplies, even helping prepare meals. Yarrow protested at first, but she ignored him with a stubborn set to her jaw that he was coming to recognize. They talked as they worked, small conversations at first. She told him about life with her orc clan, the constant training for combat, the rigid hierarchy, the endless preparation for conflicts that might never come. He told her about growing up in Millhaven, the simple rhythms of village life, the way everyone knew everyone else's business. Do you ever want to leave? She asked one evening as they sat by the fire. See other places? Sometimes. When I was younger, I used to dream about traveling to the capital, seeing the king's castle, maybe joining the merchants' guild like my brother. Yarrow poked at the fire with an iron rod, sending sparks spiraling up. But then my father got sick and I was needed here. After he died, my mother needed me. After she died, I do not know. I guess I just stayed because it was easier than leaving. That is not a good reason to stay somewhere. Maybe not, but it is a reason. He glanced at her. What about you? If you could go anywhere, do anything, what would you choose? Zara was quiet for a long moment, her gaze distant. I would find a place where it does not matter that I am half human and half orc. Where people do not look at me and see a monster or a traitor or a mistake. Her voice dropped. I would find people who see me as just me. I see you, Yarrow said, before he could think better of it. She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. What do you see? Someone brave. Someone who stands by her principles, even when it costs her everything. Someone who is stronger than she knows. He held her gaze. Someone who has been judged her whole life for things she cannot control, and who deserves better than that. Zara's eyes shone in the firelight, and for a moment Yarrow thought she might cry. Then she looked away, blinking hard. You barely know me. I know enough. They sat in silence after that, but it was a comfortable silence, the kind that did not need filling. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and steady. Inside, the fire crackled. Yarrow found himself thinking that he could not remember the last time he had felt this content. 2 weeks after pulling Zara from the river, Yarrow needed to make another trip to the village for supplies. His stores were running dangerously low, and he could not avoid it any longer. Zara was well enough now that he did not worry about leaving her alone, though her shoulder was still healing. I will be back before dark, he told her, pulling on his warmest coat. Keep the fire going and stay inside. Thomas has not said anything else about the river, but there is no point in taking chances. Be careful, she said, and there was something in her voice that made him pause. "I will." The village was busier than usual, people stocking up before another predicted snowstorm. Yarrow bought flour and salt and dried beans from the general store, traded 3 rabbit pelts for tea and sugar. He was paying for his purchases when the door opened and Cyril Drake walked in. Yarrow's stomach sank. Cyril was the village headman's son, a man of 30 who fancied himself a leader despite never having done anything to earn the title. He was broad-shouldered and loud, and he had a particular hatred for orcs. His uncle had been killed in the border wars, and Cyril had never let anyone forget it. "Yarrow Kellerman," Cyril boomed, clapping him on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. "Heard you took a swim in the Black River. That true? Slipped on some ice. It happens. Funny thing, though, Thomas Brindle swears he saw you pull something out of the water, something big and green." Cyril's smile did not reach his eyes. Course, old Thomas is usually drunk by noon, so who knows what he really saw. "Thomas should drink less," Yarrow said evenly. "Probably. But it got me thinking. We have had reports of orc scouts in the area. One of the hunting parties saw tracks a few weeks back, heading south along the river." Cyril leaned in closer. "You have not seen anything unusual, have you, living out on the edge of the village like you do?" "No, nothing unusual." Cyril studied him for a long moment, and Yarrow fought to keep his expression neutral. Finally, Cyril stepped back. "Well, you let me know if that changes. My father is organizing patrols just to be safe. Cannot be too careful with those green-skinned bastards." Yarrow gathered his supplies and left as quickly as he could without appearing to flee. His hands were shaking by the time he reached the edge of the village. Cyril was suspicious. Maybe he did not know anything for certain, but he was watching, and that was dangerous. He made it back to the cottage as the sun was setting, his arms laden with packages. Zara was at the window, and she rushed to help him as soon as he entered. "You look worried," she said. Yarrow told her about Cyril, about the questions and the patrols. "I do not think he knows anything for sure, but if he decides to come poking around out here, then I need to leave. Tonight, before the snow gets worse." "No." The word came out sharper than he intended. "You are not fully healed. You would be traveling in the dark in a storm with limited supplies. That is suicide. Better than getting you killed for harboring me." She moved to the bed, starting to gather her things. Yarrow caught her good arm, stopping her. "Listen to me. Cyril is all bluster. He likes to feel important. Even if he does come out here, he would need permission from his father to search a private home, and the headman is not going to grant that without evidence. You cannot be certain of that." "No, but I am certain that sending you out into the wilderness right now is a death sentence." He gentled his grip. "Stay, at least until the storm passes and you are fully healed. Please." Zara looked torn, her jaw working. Finally, she nodded. "Until the storm passes, but if there is any sign of real trouble, I leave immediately. I will not have your death on my conscience." The storm hit that night, howling around the cottage with a fury that made the walls shake. Yarrow lay on his mattress by the fire, listening to the wind and thinking about Cyril's questions. He should have been more careful, should have made up a better story. But he had never been good at deception, and the truth of it was that he did not want to lie about Zara, did not want to pretend she was not worth saving. "Yarrow," her voice drifted down from the bed. "Are you awake?" "Yes." "I have been thinking about what you said, about seeing me as just me." A pause. "No one has ever said something like that to me before." Yarrow sat up, looking toward the bed. He could just make out her silhouette in the dim firelight. "That is their loss. In orc culture, everything is about strength and combat prowess. I was always too small, too weak. And I think too much, question too much. My father loved me, but I know I disappointed him." Her voice was soft, vulnerable in a way he had not heard before. In human settlements, people see my tusks and my skin and they are afraid. I have spent my whole life being not enough of one thing and too much of another. Yarrow stood and moved closer, stopping a respectful distance from the bed. I think you are exactly the right amount of everything. You are strong where it matters. In here. He touched his own chest. That is worth more than any amount of combat skill. He heard her breath hitch. Why do you care so much? I do not know, he admitted. I just do. They stayed like that for a long moment, the storm raging outside and the fire crackling softly inside. Then Zara spoke again, so quietly he almost missed it. I am glad you jumped in after me. So am I. The storm lasted 3 days, dumping snow high enough to reach Yarrow's knees. They were trapped inside together, the world reduced to the 4 walls of the cottage and each other's company. Yarrow had worried it might feel claustrophobic, but instead he found himself oddly content. They played cards with his worn deck, and Zara turned out to be ruthlessly competitive. They cooked together, her directing from a chair while he did the work her injured shoulder would not allow. They talked about everything and nothing, childhood memories, favorite foods, the nature of courage, the best way to prepare rabbit stew. On the 3rd night, Yarrow woke to the sound of whimpering. He sat up, disoriented, and realized it was coming from the bed. Zara was thrashing beneath the blankets, caught in some nightmare. No, she gasped. Please no, I will not. I cannot. Yarrow moved to the bed without thinking, sitting on the edge and gently touching her good shoulder. Zara, wake up. It is just a dream. Her eyes flew open, wild and unseeing for a moment. Then she focused on him and the tension drained from her body all at once. She was shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. What did you dream? He asked gently. The raid. The one my clan wanted to do. Her voice was unsteady. But in the dream, I went with them. I watched them burn the human village, kill everyone inside. Children were screaming and I did nothing, just stood there frozen. She covered her face with her hand. It felt so real. But it was not real. You left instead of participating. You made the right choice. Did I? Sometimes I wonder if I should have stayed, tried harder to convince them not to do it. They gave you a choice between joining them or leaving. That means they were not interested in being convinced. Yarrow found himself reaching for her hand, threading his fingers through hers. You cannot save people who do not want to be saved. She looked down at their joined hands, and he realized what he had done. He started to pull away, but she tightened her grip, keeping him there. Thank you, she whispered, for everything. Yarrow's heart was doing strange things in his chest. You do not need to thank me. Yes, I do. You saved my life. You risked your reputation, maybe your safety, to help me. You treat me like I am worth something. Her amber eyes met his, and there was something fierce and vulnerable in them all at once. I will never forget that. He should have said something light, something to break the intensity of the moment. Instead, he heard himself say, You are worth something, worth everything. Zara inhaled sharply. They were close enough that he could feel her breath, could count the faint freckles across her nose that he had never noticed before. Her hand came up, hesitant, and touched his face. Her palm was warm against his cheek. Yarrow, she started, but whatever she meant to say was lost as he leaned in and kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, giving her every chance to pull away. She did not pull away. Instead, she made a small sound in the back of her throat and kissed him back, her hand sliding into his hair. Yarrow felt like he was falling again, tumbling through dark water, but this time he was not afraid. This time he wanted to fall. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Yarrow rested his forehead against hers. We should not do this. It is complicated. I know. If anyone finds out, I know. But I do not care. He pulled back enough to see her face. I do not care about any of it. I just know that I have never felt this way before and I do not want to lose it." Zara's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I feel the same. But Yarrow, I am still planning to leave when spring comes. I have to. It is not safe for me to stay here and it is not fair to you to put you at risk." "We will figure it out," he said, though he had no idea how. "We have time." She kissed him again, and he let himself believe that time was all they needed. The storm finally broke on the fourth day, leaving the world white and silent. Yarrow had to dig through hip-deep drifts to reach his woodpile, and the walk to the village would be impossible for at least another day or two. They were still isolated, still safe. Zara's shoulder was healing well, the swelling finally going down. She could move it a little without pain, though Yarrow still insisted she keep it wrapped. They had fallen into an easy domesticity since the kiss, stealing small touches as they moved around the cottage, sitting close by the fire in the evenings. Yarrow was checking the cottage's exterior, looking for any damage from the storm when he heard voices. His blood went cold. He looked toward the tree line and saw 3 figures trudging through the snow toward the cottage. As they got closer, he recognized Cyril Drake in the lead, flanked by 2 other men from the village. Yarrow's mind raced. He glanced at the cottage door, wishing he could warn Zara, but there was no time. The men were already within shouting distance. "Yarrow," Cyril called. "We are doing a wellness check, making sure everyone survived the storm." It was a lie. Cyril had never cared about anyone's wellness in his life. Yarrow plastered on a smile and moved to intercept them before they could reach the door. "That is kind of you. As you can see, I am fine." Cottage held up well. "Good, good." Cyril was still walking forward. "Mind if we come in? Warm up a bit before we head back. Actually, I would prefer you did not. I think I might have caught something from that dip in the river. Been coughing for days. I would hate to pass it along." Cyril stopped, his eyes narrowing. "Funny, you do not sound like you are coughing. It comes and goes." "Right." Cyril looked past him at the cottage. "The thing is, Yarrow, we have had reports of orc activity in this area. We are doing a house-to-house search. It is for everyone's safety." "There are no orcs here. Then you will not mind if we take a quick look around." Yarrow's hand tightened on the shovel he was still holding. "I do mind, actually. This is my property. You have no right. We have every right if there is a threat to the village." Cyril's voice hardened. "Now step aside, or I will assume you are hiding something." Yarrow did not move. The 2 men with Cyril shifted, hands moving to the clubs at their belts. This was going to turn violent, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Then the cottage door opened, and Zara stepped out. She was wearing Yarrow's clothes, far too large on her frame, and she had clearly just woken up. Her black hair was loose around her shoulders, her tusks clearly visible. She looked at the 3 men, then at Yarrow, and something like resignation crossed her face. "So much for staying hidden," she said. Cyril let out a string of curses and drew his club. The other 2 men followed suit. "I knew it. I knew you were harboring one of them." Yarrow moved to put himself between Zara and the men, the shovel raised. "Get back in the cottage." "No." Zara moved to stand beside him instead. "I will not let you fight my battles." "How touching," Cyril sneered. "The orc and the traitor together at last. My father is going to hear about this, Kellerman. You will be lucky if he does not exile you. Your father is a reasonable man." "He will understand." "Understand what? That you have been keeping a monster in your bed." Cyril spat in the snow. "There are laws against this kind of thing. Fraternizing with the enemy, you are a disgrace." Zara's hand found Yarrow's, squeezing once. "I am leaving right now. There is no need for this to escalate." "Oh, you are leaving all right." Cyril stepped forward. "In chains. You are coming back to the village to answer for whatever crimes brought you here." "She has committed no crimes," Yarrow snapped. She fell through the ice. I pulled her out, that is all. That is not all, and we both know it. Cyril's gaze flicked between them, seeing the way they stood together, the way their hands were joined. This is an abomination. Humans and orcs were never meant to mix. You do not get to decide that. Cyril's face darkened. I am taking her in. If you try to stop me, I will arrest you too. Yarrow tightened his grip on the shovel. He was outnumbered 3-1, and none of these men would hesitate to use their weapons. But he could not let them take Zara. Could not let them hurt her. Try it, he said quietly. For a moment, everything hung in balance. Then one of the men with Cyril, a farmer named Len who Yarrow had known since childhood, lowered his club. This is wrong, Cyril. She is unarmed. She is not threatening anyone. She is an orc, so what? Len looked uncomfortable, but he stood his ground. I was at the border wars too. I know what orcs can do when they want to hurt someone. This girl is not doing that. She is just standing there. She has bewitched Kellerman somehow. Oh, for God's sake. The second man, Marcus, also lowered his club. Listen to yourself. No one is bewitched. Yarrow is a grown man making his own choices. Choices that are none of our business. Cyril looked at his companions with undisguised fury. Fine. Go back to the village if you are too cowardly to do what is necessary. I will handle this myself. You are not handling anything, Len said firmly. Come on, Cyril. Let it go. There is no harm being done here. For a terrible moment, Yarrow thought Cyril would attack anyway. Then the headman's son lowered his club with obvious reluctance. My father will hear about this, all of it. He pointed at Yarrow. You have made an enemy today, Kellerman. Remember that. The three men turned and trudged back through the snow toward the village. Yarrow watched until they disappeared into the trees, his heart pounding. You should not have come out, he said to Zara. I was not going to hide while you fought alone. She was shaking, though whether from cold or fear he could not tell. But Yarrow, this changes everything. You heard him. He is going to tell his father there will be consequences. Let there be consequences. He turned to face her. I do not regret anything. You should. I have ruined your life. You have done nothing of the sort. He took both her hands in his. Whatever happens next, we will face it together. She looked at him like he was speaking nonsense. There is no together. I have to leave now before the headman sends more people who will not be talked out of violence. Then I am coming with you. Zara's eyes went wide. What? You heard me. I am coming with you. Wherever you go, I go too. That is insane. This is your home, your life. My life is not worth much without you in it. The words felt huge and true, like something he had known for a while but had not let himself admit. I love you, Zara. I did not plan to fall in love with you, but I did, and now I cannot imagine going back to the way things were before. Tears spilled down her cheeks. You do not know what you are saying. You cannot just abandon everything for me. Watch me. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, the tears away. I choose you. Every time, no matter what. So we can stay here and fight for the right to be together, or we can leave and build a life somewhere else. But the one thing I will not do is let you walk away thinking you are alone. You are not alone. Not anymore. Zara sobbed once, then threw her good arm around him and buried her face in his shoulder. I love you too, she whispered against his neck. I tried not to. I told myself it was impossible, but I love you so much it hurts. They stood there in the snow, holding each other, and Yarrow felt something settle in his chest. This was right. Whatever came next, this was exactly where he was supposed to be. They had just pulled apart when another figure emerged from the tree line. Yarrow reached for the shovel again, then relaxed when he recognized Marta. The old woman was bundled in furs and leaning heavily on a walking stick, but she was moving with surprising speed. Thought I might find you two out here, she said, slightly breathless. Saw Cyril and his boys heading this direction and figured there might be trouble. You just missed it, Yarrow said. He found out about Zara. He is on his way to tell his father right now. Then you do not have much time. Marta pulled a small pouch from inside her coat and pressed it into Yarrow's hands. Money. Not much, but enough to get you started somewhere new. There is also a map with safe routes marked out and the names of people who might help you. Yarrow stared at the pouch. Marta, I cannot take this. Yes, you can and you will. I am too old to have much use for money anyway. She turned to Zara. I am sorry, child. Sorry that the world has not been kinder to you, but you have found a good man here, one worth holding on to. I know, Zara said softly. Good. Now both of you get inside and pack. Take everything you need but can carry. Food, warm clothes, fire starting supplies. I will keep watch in case anyone else comes. They hurried to obey, moving through the cottage like a coordinated team. Yarrow packed his warmest clothes, his hunting knife, flint and tinder. Zara gathered their remaining food supplies, bundling everything into 2 packs. She moved carefully, favoring her healing shoulder, but she did not slow down. Within 20 minutes, they were ready. Yarrow took one last look around the cottage that had been his home for 23 years. So many memories lived in these walls. His parents' laughter, his brother's terrible singing, his mother's steady hands kneading bread. But none of those memories mattered as much as the woman standing beside him. Ready? She asked. Ready. They stepped outside to find Marta still keeping watch. The old woman smiled at them, her eyes crinkling. There now. That is a good sight. 2 people choosing each other, despite the world telling them they should not. She pointed south. Follow the river for 3 days, then cut west. There is a settlement there, mostly trappers and fur traders. They do not ask many questions and they do not care about the old prejudices. You can make a life there. Yarrow hugged her, this woman who had known him since birth, who had loved his parents and now loved him enough to help him leave. Thank you for everything. Thank your father. He is the one who taught you to see people as people, no matter their skin. Marta pulled back and cupped his face in her wrinkled hands. Be happy, Yarrow, you deserve it. She turned to Zara and surprised them both by hugging her too. You take care of him, and let him take care of you. That is what love is, child, taking turns being strong. I will, Zara promised. They set off south, following the Black River upstream. The going was slow through the deep snow, but they helped each other, taking turns breaking trail. Yarrow kept glancing over his shoulder for the first hour, expecting to see pursuit, but the forest behind them remained empty. They stopped to rest when the sun was high, sharing dried meat and water from Yarrow's canteen. Zara's shoulder was clearly bothering her, and Yarrow made her take some of the willow bark tea from their supplies. She obeyed without argument, too tired to fight him. You regret it yet? She asked as they prepared to move on. Not even a little bit. You? No, she smiled, and it transformed her whole face. I feel free. Terrified but free. They reached a small cave system as darkness fell, the kind of shelter Yarrow's father had taught him to look for when hunting in winter. They built a small fire near the entrance, carefully positioned so the smoke would dissipate before leaving the cave. Yarrow laid out their bedrolls side by side, and they settled in to wait out the night. Tell me about the settlement Marta mentioned, Zara said, huddled close to him for warmth. The one with the trappers. I have heard of it. Green Hollow, I think it is called. It sits near the border of the old territories, the places that were fought over during the wars. Because of that, it has always been more mixed, more accepting of differences. If you can work and pull your weight, they do not care about much else. Do you think they will accept us, a human and an orc together? I think we will not be the strangest thing they have ever seen. He pulled her closer, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. And if they do not accept us, we will keep moving until we find somewhere that does. We have time. Time, she repeated like she was testing the word. That is a strange thought. I have spent so long just surviving day to day. The idea of having time, of building something that lasts, it feels impossible. It is not impossible, it is just new. He kissed the top of her head. We will figure it out together. That is the important part. Together. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, the fire burning low. Yarrow had the most restful sleep he could remember, despite the hard ground and cold air. He woke to weak sunlight filtering into the cave and Zara already up, carefully packing their supplies. "Morning," she said when she saw him stirring. "I let you sleep. You were exhausted, so were you. Orcs do not need as much sleep as humans, one of the few advantages of my mixed heritage." She handed him some bread and cheese for breakfast. "We should make good time today. The river is still frozen solid, so we can walk on it instead of fighting through the forest." They set out again, and the next 3 days passed in a blur of cold and exhaustion and quiet companionship. They talked as they walked, sharing more stories, more pieces of themselves. Yarrow learned that Zara was afraid of spiders but loved thunderstorms, that she had a beautiful singing voice she rarely used, that her favorite food was honey cakes, even though she had only tasted them once as a child. Zara learned that Yarrow had wanted to be a scholar when he was young, that he could read and write better than most people in his village, that he had a habit of talking to animals when he thought no one was listening. She teased him about that last one, until he demonstrated by having a full conversation with a confused-looking squirrel, which made her laugh so hard she nearly fell over. On the 4th day, they turned west as Marta had instructed, leaving the river behind. The terrain grew rougher, all hills and ravines that slowed their progress. Zara's shoulder was bothering her more, though she tried to hide it. Yarrow called for frequent rest stops, ignoring her protests. They found another cave that night, deeper than the last, with evidence that other travelers had used it before. Someone had left a small stack of firewood, and Yarrow sent up a silent thank you to whoever that generous soul had been. They built a fire and settled in. "How are you really doing?" Yarrow asked as he checked her shoulder. The binding was still secure, but he could see her wincing with every movement. "And do not lie to me. It hurts," she admitted. "But it is healing. Another week or 2 and it should be back to normal. We can slow down if you need to." "No. We need to keep distance between us and Millhaven, just in case." She caught his hand, threading their fingers together. "I will be fine, Yarrow. I am tougher than I look. I know you are." He leaned in and kissed her, slow and gentle. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "I am still going to worry about you." "Good. That means you care." They spent the evening by the fire, and Zara taught Yarrow some orc words. The language was guttural, hard on his human throat, but he tried his best. She corrected his pronunciation with infinite patience, smiling at his mistakes. "What does this one mean again?" he asked, stumbling over a particularly difficult phrase. "My heart knows you." She said it again, slower, and he repeated after her. "There, that was better." "My heart knows you," Yarrow said again, this time in the common tongue. "I like that. It is more true than just I love you." Zara's eyes softened. In Orcish culture, it is the highest declaration you can make. It means you recognize the other person's soul, that you see all of who they are and accept it without reservation. "Then my heart knows you," he said firmly. "Every part of you." She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and they lost themselves in each other for a while. Later, as they lay tangled together in their bedrolls, Zara traced patterns on his chest with one finger. "I never thought I would have this," she whispered. "I thought I was meant to be alone, that being half one thing and half another meant I would never truly belong anywhere. You belong with me, I belong with you, that is all that matters." Is it really that simple? It is really that simple. On the sixth day, they spotted smoke rising from a valley below. As they descended the hillside, a settlement came into view. It was larger than Yarrow had expected, maybe 24 buildings clustered around a central common area. People moved between the structures, busy with the work of daily life. "Green hello," Yarrow said. "We made it." They approached carefully, aware of how they must look. Travel-stained and exhausted, an orc woman and a human man with all their possessions on their backs. But the first person they encountered, a middle-aged woman hauling water from a well, barely gave Zara a second glance. "New arrivals?" she asked. "Yes," Yarrow said. "We were told Green Hello might be a good place to settle. We are willing to work. Work is always needed out here. You will want to talk to Gerard. He is the closest thing we have to a headman, though he would laugh if you called him that." She pointed to the largest building. "He is usually in the trading post this time of day." They found Gerard exactly where she said he would be, a bear of a man with a salt and pepper beard and shrewd eyes. He looked them over with the air of someone who had seen everything and was not easily surprised. "You two look like you have had a hard journey," he observed. "We have," Yarrow admitted. "We are looking for a place to stay, somewhere we can build a life together." Gerard's gaze flicked to their joined hands, then to Zara's face. "Orc and human, that is going to cause talk even here. Will it cause problems?" Zara asked, her voice steady despite the tension Yarrow could feel in her body. "Not from me. And most folks here mind their own business. We get all kinds through Green Hello. Refugees from the wars, exiles from various clans, humans who could not make it in the cities. Long as you work hard and do not cause trouble, no one will care what you are or who you love." He stroked his beard thoughtfully. "We could use a hunter. Winter is starting to break, and we will need fresh meat when the spring thaw comes. And if your lady friend knows anything about scouting or tracking, that is valuable too." "I can hunt," Yarrow said. "My father taught me. And Zara was trained by an orc clan. She knows tracking and wilderness survival." "Good. There is an empty cabin on the east edge of the settlement. Not much to look at, but it is solid and has a good fireplace. You can have it in exchange for contributing to the community." "How does that sound?" Yarrow looked at Zara, who nodded. "It sounds perfect." Gerard led them through the settlement, pointing out key buildings. The trading post, the communal kitchen where meals were shared on cold nights, the healer's cottage. People watched them pass, curious but not hostile. A few even nodded in greeting. The cabin Gerard showed them was small, much like Yarrow's old cottage, but it was well built and dry. Someone had left a stack of firewood and basic supplies. A cooking pot, 2 plates, blankets. It was not much, but it was more than enough. "Welcome to Green Hello," Gerard said, clapping Yarrow on the shoulder. "I will leave you two to settle in. Come find me tomorrow and we will talk about work details." When he was gone, Yarrow and Zara stood in the middle of their new home and looked at each other. Then Zara started laughing, the sound bright and disbelieving. "We did it," she said. "We actually did it." Yarrow picked her up and spun her around, careful of her shoulder, both of them laughing now. When he set her down, he cupped her face in his hands. "This is just the beginning," he told her. "The beginning of everything." Spring came to Green Hello in a rush of green and birdsong. The snow melted, revealing the earth beneath, and the settlement came alive with planting and building. Yarrow threw himself into his work as a hunter, ranging into the surrounding forests and bringing back deer, rabbits, and wild turkey. Zara's shoulder healed fully, and she took on the role of scout, mapping safe routes through the territory and teaching the younger residents how to track and navigate. They became part of the community faster than Yarrow had dared hope. Gerard had been right. Most people in Greenhollow were too busy with their own lives to care about an orc-human couple. There were a few sideways looks, a few whispered conversations that stopped when they approached, but nothing worse than that. Yarrow and Zara carved out a life together in their small cabin. They hunted together in the early mornings, Zara teaching him tricks she had learned from her clan, Yarrow showing her techniques his father had passed down. They cooked together in the evenings, experimenting with recipes that combined human and orcish cuisine. They lay together at night, learning each other's bodies and hearts with equal reverence. One evening in late spring, as they sat outside their cabin watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold, Zara took Yarrow's hand. "I have been thinking," she said, "about my family. My father and brother back with the clan." Yarrow squeezed her fingers. "Do you want to try to contact them? I do not know if they would want to hear from me. I shamed them by leaving. In orc culture, that is not easily forgiven. But you are not asking for forgiveness. You are just letting them know you are alive and happy. There is a difference." Zara considered that. "I could send a letter to the trading post nearest their territory. Maybe it would reach them, maybe it would not. But at least I would have tried. Then we will send a letter." They spent that evening composing it together, Zara dictating while Yarrow wrote in his careful hand. The letter was simple and honest. Zara told her father and brother that she had found a place where she belonged, people who accepted her as she was. She told them about Yarrow, about Greenhollow, about the life she was building. She ended by saying that she understood if they could not forgive her, but she wanted them to know she thought of them often and loved them still. Gerard arranged for the letter to be sent with a traveling merchant who made rounds through the old territories. Whether it would reach its destination was anyone's guess, but at least it was a start. Summer brought long days of work and longer evenings of community gatherings. Greenhollow celebrated the season with music and dancing, and Yarrow discovered that Zara could dance with surprising grace, despite her claims that orcs had no talent for it. He whirled her around the common area while their neighbors clapped and cheered, her laughter ringing out clear and bright. "I never knew life could be like this," she told him that night as they walked back to their cabin hand in hand. "Simple and good. No constant fighting, no rigid hierarchy, just people living and working together." "It is not perfect," Yarrow said. "Nowhere is perfect, but it is ours." "Ours," she repeated, smiling. "I like the sound of that." In late summer, a merchant caravan came through Greenhollow with trade goods and news from the surrounding territories. Among the merchants was an old orc male with graying hair and a weathered face. He asked after Zara by name, saying he had been sent to find her. Yarrow's first instinct was to protect her, to put himself between Zara and this stranger. But Zara stepped forward, her expression wary but curious. "I am Zara Northwick. Who sent you?" The old orc studied her for a long moment, then pulled a letter from his pack. "Your father. He received your message. He asked me to deliver this in return." Zara took the letter with shaking hands. She broke the seal and read, her eyes moving rapidly across the page. Yarrow watched her face, trying to read her reaction. When she finished, she looked up with tears streaming down her cheeks. "He forgives me," she whispered. "He says he was angry at first, but after he had time to think, he realized I made the right choice. He is proud of me." She read further, her voice breaking. "My brother is well. The clan decided not to do the raid after all. The war chief was challenged and defeated by someone more interested in peace. My father says things are changing slowly, but they are changing." Yarrow pulled her into his arms, letting her cry against his chest. The old orc merchant watched with something like approval. "Your father also sent this," he said, pulling a small wrapped package from his pack. "He said it belonged to your mother. He wanted you to have it." Zara unwrapped the package with trembling fingers. Inside was a necklace, a simple leather cord strung with carved wooden beads. She held it like it was made of gold, her thumb tracing the familiar patterns. "She made this herself," Zara said softly. "She wore it every day. I remember playing with it when I was small, how the beads would click together." She fastened it around her neck, and Yarrow could see how much it meant to her. This tangible connection to her past, to the mother she had lost. "Thank you," she told the merchant, "for bringing this to me. Your father asked me to tell you one more thing." The old orc's expression softened. "He said that if you ever want to visit, you would be welcome. Both of you," he added, nodding to Yarrow. "He said any man willing to dive into a freezing river to save his daughter is a man he would be honored to meet." After the merchant left, Zara read the letter 3 more times, as if afraid the words would disappear if she looked away too long. Yarrow made her tea and held her as the reality of reconciliation sank in. "We could visit," he suggested, "when fall comes and the traveling is easier, if you want to." "I do want to," Zara said. "I want you to meet my father. I want him to see how happy I am." She looked up at him, her eyes still wet but shining. "I want to show him that I made the right choice, that leaving led me to you, and that was worth everything." As summer turned to fall, Yarrow and Zara made plans for their journey north. Gerard gave them his blessing and promised their cabin would be waiting when they returned. They packed carefully, taking gifts for Zara's family and supplies for the long trip. The night before they were set to leave, Yarrow took Zara to the small hill overlooking Greenhollow. The settlement was lit with dozens of small fires, warm and welcoming in the gathering dusk. "Before we go, there is something I want to ask you," Yarrow said. He was nervous in a way he had not been since the day he jumped into the Black River. "I do not have much to offer. No family estate, no fortune. Just myself and whatever future we can build together." "Yarrow, what are you?" He pulled a ring from his pocket. He had made it himself over the past few weeks, carving it from a piece of antler and polishing it until it gleamed. It was simple, but it was honest, and it was his. "Marry me," he said. "Let me spend the rest of my life showing you how much my heart knows you." Zara stared at the ring, then at him, her mouth slightly open. "You want to marry me more than I have ever wanted anything. But I am an orc. You are human. In most places, what we have would be seen as wrong or forbidden or, I do not care about most places. I care about you and me and the life we are building together. I care about waking up next to you every morning and falling asleep beside you every night. I care about facing whatever comes next together." He took her hand. "So yes, I want to marry you if you will have me." Zara was crying again, but she was also smiling so wide her tusks showed clearly. "Yes," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and it fit perfectly. Then he kissed her as the sun set behind them, painting the world in shades of amber and gold. When they finally broke apart, Zara laughed and wiped at her tears. "We are really doing this," she said, "building a life together. Getting married, meeting my family. We are really doing this." They stood on that hill for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, looking out at the settlement that had become their home. Yarrow thought about the day he had jumped into the Black River, the moment his life had changed forever. He had not known then what that choice would lead to. Had not known he would find love and purpose and a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. But he knew now. And he would make that same choice again in a heartbeat. When they made the journey north to visit Zara's family, they went as a couple, as partners, as two people who had chosen each other against all odds. Zara's father welcomed them with open arms, and if he was surprised to see his daughter so happy, he hid it well. He and Yarrow spoke at length. sharing stories about Zara, about loss and love and the courage it took to stand by your principles. Zara's brother, a younger male named Grek, was more reserved at first, but he warmed up over the course of their visit, especially after Yarrow beat him in a friendly archery competition. By the time they left, Grek was calling Yarrow brother and making him promise to visit again. The journey back to Greenhollow took them past the Black River. Yarrow stood on its banks, looking at the dark water that had almost killed them both. It seemed like a lifetime ago, that desperate plunge into freezing darkness. In many ways, it had been a different life. He had been a different person then, lonely and adrift, going through the motions without really living. "What are you thinking?" Zara asked, coming to stand beside him. "I am thinking about how strange life is, how one moment one choice can change everything." He turned to her. "If the ice had not broken beneath you that day, if I had not heard you fall, if I had hesitated even a moment before jumping in, none of this would exist. We would have never met. But you did not hesitate. You jumped." She took his hand, her ring catching the sunlight. "And I will be grateful for that every day for the rest of my life." They returned to Greenhollow as fall painted the forests in brilliant colors. Gerard met them at the edge of the settlement, grinning broadly. "Welcome back. How was the trip?" "Good," Zara said. "Better than good. Perfect." "Glad to hear it, and I see you are wearing a ring." Gerard looked between them, his grin widening. "I take it congratulations are in order. We are getting married," Yarrow confirmed. "We were hoping to do it here in Greenhollow, if that is acceptable." "Acceptable. It is cause for celebration. We will throw you a proper wedding feast. When were you thinking?" Yarrow and Zara looked at each other. "Soon," they said in unison, and Gerard laughed. The settlement came together to prepare for the wedding with an enthusiasm that touched Yarrow deeply. People contributed what they could. Food for the feast, flowers to decorate the common area, music and dancing. The healer offered to officiate, a practical woman named Iris who had performed dozens of weddings over her years in Greenhollow. On the day of the wedding, Yarrow woke early in the small room above the trading post where he had been staying. Gerard had insisted on the tradition of the couple spending the night before apart, claiming it was good luck. Yarrow had not believed in luck before meeting Zara, but he was willing to respect the custom. He dressed in his best clothes, which were not much but were clean and well mended. His hands shook slightly as he tried to fasten the buttons on his shirt. He could not remember the last time he had been this nervous. Maybe never. A knock on the door revealed Gerard, looking unusually formal in a pressed shirt and vest. "Ready? I think so. Is Zara? She is ready too, and she looks beautiful in case you were wondering. Now come on." Everyone is waiting. The common area had been transformed. Flowers hung from every available surface, their scent sweet on the autumn air. The entire settlement had gathered, maybe 50 people all told, sitting on benches arranged in neat rows. At the front, Iris stood waiting, a small book of vows in her hands. And there, walking toward him down the improvised aisle, was Zara. She wore a dress someone in the settlement had made for her, simple but elegant, dyed a deep forest green that complemented her skin. Her black hair was woven with small white flowers. Her tusks were polished and gleaming. She was the most beautiful thing Yarrow had ever seen. He met her halfway down the aisle, unable to wait any longer. She laughed and took his arm, and together they walked to where Iris stood. "Friends and neighbors," Iris began, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "We come together today to witness the union of Yarrow Kellerman and Zara Northwick, two people from different worlds who found each other against all odds. Two people who chose love when the world told them to choose hate. Two people who remind us all that family is not always about blood. Sometimes it is about choice." Yarrow barely heard the rest of the ceremony. He was too focused on Zara, on the way her eyes shone as she looked at him, on the smile that curved her lips. They exchanged vows, simple promises to love and support each other through whatever came next. They exchanged rings, Zara giving him a band she had carved herself, matching his. "By the power vested in me by this community, I now pronounce you married," Iris said. "You may kiss." Yarrow did not need to be told twice. He pulled Zara close and kissed her as their friends and neighbors erupted in cheers and applause. When they broke apart, both of them were grinning like fools. The feast that followed was joyous and loud, full of music and laughter and far too much food. People danced and sang, telling stories and making toasts. Yarrow danced with his wife, still marveling at that word, while the settlement celebrated around them. Late in the evening, as the party was winding down, Yarrow and Zara slipped away to their cabin. They stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at their home with new eyes. "Husband," Zara said, testing out the word. "Wife," Yarrow replied, equally amazed. They went inside and closed the door on the rest of the world. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever obstacles they would face them together. As partners, as equals. As two people whose hearts knew each other completely. Yarrow thought about that day at the Black River one more time. The moment he had stood on the bank, hearing a splash, seeing green skin disappearing beneath dark water. The split second where he had to choose, jump or walk away, he had jumped. And it had led him here, to this moment, to this woman, to this life. To happiness he had not known was possible. It was the best decision he had ever made. Winter came again to Greenhollow, but this time Yarrow did not face it alone. He had Zara beside him, her warmth and strength and fierce love. They worked together, hunted together, built their life together piece by careful piece. When spring returned and the Black River thawed, they walked its banks together. Yarrow showed Zara the exact spot where she had fallen through the ice, where he had jumped in after her. "I do not remember much of that day," Zara admitted. "It is all fragments. The cold, the darkness, your arms pulling me up, waking up on the shore and seeing your face." "I remember everything," Yarrow said. "I remember thinking I might lose you before I even knew you. I remember being terrified that I would not be strong enough to save you. But you were. We both were." He pulled her close. "You survived the river. You survived the fever. You survived leaving everything you knew to build something new. You are stronger than anyone I have ever met, Zara." She rested her head on his shoulder, and they stood together watching the river flow past. It was not black anymore in the spring light, but green and blue and full of life. Just like them, years would pass, and their story would become part of Greenhollow's history. People would tell it to their children and grandchildren. The tale of the orc woman who slipped beneath the Black River and the village man who dove after her without a second thought. The tale of two people who chose love when the world chose hate. The tale of courage and kindness and the belief that sometimes the right thing to do was also the hardest thing to do. But all of that was still to come. For now, in this moment, Yarrow and Zara stood on the riverbank hand in hand, looking toward a future they would build together. A future full of possibility and promise and love. "Ready to go home?" Yarrow asked. Zara smiled, her tusks gleaming in the sunlight, her amber eyes bright with joy. "With you, always." And so they walked back to Greenhollow together, to their cabin and their community, and the life they had fought so hard to claim. Two hearts that knew each other, two souls that had chosen each other, two people who had discovered that sometimes the greatest adventure began with a single leap of faith. The Black River flowed on behind them, carrying away the past and all its sorrows, leaving only the present and its precious, hard-won happiness. And that, Yarrow thought as he looked at his wife was more than enough. It was everything.